There's always next year. That's the hope all Clevelanders carry. No matter how far down we feel after a tough loss from the Cleveland Browns or a near-miss championship season with the greatest Cleveland Cavs that we've had in quite a while, we never give up hope for the future. We are Believeland. It's in our name. It's the name that we gave ourselves for that very reason. And our hope keeps us coming back year after year, heartache after heartache. And yet this year, our Cleveland hope got a little extra fuel. As just a few days ago, we witnessed the Cleveland Guardians make Major League Baseball history by climbing back 15 and a half games to clinch the division. And now this afternoon, we are playing to get into the next round of the playoffs. Who would have thought? It is the Cleveland hope. We are stubborn, we're long-suffering, we're defiant. And it reminds us of when the odds are impossible, because they are. Hope still pulls us forward. Just as Jews proclaim at the closing of every Passover Seder next year in Jerusalem, we Clevelanders cry out at the close of every season, there's always next year. Our Jewish and our Cleveland hopes are deeply intertwined. And yet there is a monumental difference. The late Rabbi Marmer, one of the great Reform rabbis and thinkers of our time, wrote about the difference between what I'm going to call the Cleveland hope versus Jewish hope. He writes, "While optimism is a matter of personality or disposition, hope is a matter of faith. Optimism is the belief that things will get better. Hope is the faith that with our efforts, we can make things better. Optimism is passive. Hope is active." That's the difference. Cleveland hope is optimistic. Maybe next year. Jewish hope is active. Next year in Jerusalem really means, what will I do and what do I have to do to change the future? And that's exactly what Oded Leshem, a contemporary Israeli scholar, calls optimal hope. Leshem has spent his career studying how people hold on to hope even in the midst of intractable conflict. In his book, Hope Amidst Conflict, he argues that ordinary hope depends on outcomes. If things don't go our way, hope collapses. And I'm sure we've all been in a situation where we've worked hard and we've put everything into it, and when it doesn't work, sometimes we just lose hope. But optimal hope doesn't live in outcomes. It lives in desire and action. Even when the odds are stacked against us, it says, I will act, I will strive, I will keep moving forward despite the eventual outcome. That is Jewish hope. It's not waiting for something to happen, but choosing to make it happen. Jews are no stranger to hopelessness and despair. I do not need to tour you through the litany of tragedies that have befallen our Jewish ancestors throughout time and history. And today we need not look too far, nor imagine how it must have felt to live in a world full of Jew hatred and anti-Semitic violence. And it is easy to fall into despair and hopelessness. But the roots of hope in Judaism run deep. And I want to take you to one of the most hopeless times in the history of our Jewish people. It was the year 586 BCE. Jerusalem had just been destroyed. The first temple burned to the ground. the leadership of Judah dragged off in chains to Babylon. Everything the people knew and believed, the land, the temple, Jewish life, was gone. They had lost not only their home, but the very center of their world. And it was in that dark hour that the prophet Ezekiel, himself amongst the exiles, experienced a vision. God carried him into a valley filled with dry bones, a haunting image of Israel's despair. And Ezekiel heard the people's cry through these bones, Avda tikvatenu, our hope is utterly lost. But God refused to let despair be the last word. God told Ezekiel, prophecy to these bones, speak life into the lifeless. And as Ezekiel spoke, the bones rattled and came together. Flesh covered them. Breath entered them, and they rose to their feet. A vast people would one day be restored. And it was at that moment when Israel declared hope was lost, Avda tikvatenu, that God gave a vision that hope can always be reborn. Centuries later, in 1878, Naphtali Hertz Imber, a Jewish poet, wrote a poem called Tikvatenu. He was living in Ottoman-ruled Palestine, decades before there was a state and long before there was any guarantee that Jews would return. His words became the inspiration for Israel's national anthem, Hatikva. In 1878, he wrote, Kol od lo avda tikvatenu. Again, Kol od lo avda tikvatenu. Our hope will never be lost. The ancient hope to return to the land of our fathers. What he did you see what he did? He turned Ezekiel's vision inside out, where the exiled had said, Avda tikvatenu, our hope is utterly lost. Imber declared, Odlo avda tikvatenu, our hope is not lost. The ancient hope to return to the land of our fathers. Kol od, as long as in his heart within a soul of a Jew still yearns, and onwards towards the end of the east, his eye still looks towards Zion. And after a chorus of Kol od, visions as long as, Imber concludes the poem by boldly pronouncing the following: Hear, O my siblings in the land of exile, the voice of our visionaries, who declares that only with the very last Jew, only there is the end of our hope. In other words, so long as even one Jew remains, hope itself remains alive. This is the very definition of Jewish hope. In Deuteronomy, we just read that God places before us life and death, blessing and curse. It says, choose life so that you and your children may live. On the surface, it sounds obvious. Who wouldn't choose blessing? But Torah is telling us something deeper, that life and blessing do not arrive on their own. They are not guaranteed. They must be chosen through our actions, through your commitments, through the way that you live your life right now. That is what Jewish hope demands of you. Not to sit back in despair and wait for the world to turn around, but to dig deep and to do the work to turn it yourselves. Our starting point is the hope that we have in our children. There's a midrash that I share oftentimes at baby namings and Brit Milah ceremonies. Israel stood at Mount Sinai getting ready to receive the Torah. And God says to Israel, present to me good guarantors that you will guard my Torah, then I shall give it to you. And the Israelites proclaim that our ancestors will be our guarantors. And God says, that is not a good enough guarantor. Give me something else. And they said, our prophets will be our guarantors. And God says, think again. Try that again. And they said, our children will be our guarantors. And God responded, they are certainly good guarantors. For their sake, I shall give you the Torah. Our children are our guarantors. They are the reason we must choose life and blessing, the reason why we must keep working for a better future. But there is a challenge that lies ahead of us, one that too many have already determined, Avda tikvatenu, our hope is utterly lost. As I shared on Rosh Hashanah, there is a widening generational divide. Each year that goes by, fewer Jews have a direct connection to the Holocaust or to the founding state of Israel. For our younger generations, their connection to Israel, as I shared on Rosh Hashanah, is not shaped by 1948 or 1967, not by 1973 or 1991. It's not rooted in the early 2000s with the Second Intifada. Instead, it is shaped by 2025, a moment in which Israel's military strength and success of a nation just over 75 years often paints a picture of the oppressor rather than the oppressed. At the same time, our children are growing up in a world more open and accepting to Jews than any previous generation had experienced. And yet, paradoxically, one in which their place in the larger conversation is often defined by their willingness to apologize for their Judaism and their willingness to distance themselves from the state of Israel, especially in progressive circles. And in turn, they're growing more disconnected from Jewish life and Jewish peoplehood. And the data confirms this reality. I'm not just making this up. According to Pew Research, nearly 40% of Gen Z Jews, generational Z Jews, say that they do not feel they need a spiritual community. 40%. Only 48% of millennials and Gen Z believe that the U.S. should support Israel, compared to more than 80% of older Jews. And while older Jews are far more likely to say that they feel very attached to Israel and their Jewish people, fewer than half of young Jews report the same connection. This is the abyss that we must bridge, not by wringing our hands, but by acting with hope. Jewish hope tells us to invest in your children, give them experiences of depth and joy and connection that root them in who they are. And as we read in our Torah portion this morning, for this mitzvah is neither beyond you nor far away. It is not in the heavens nor beyond the seas. No, it is very near to you, in your mouth and in your heart to carry out. The path of our hope begins right here at Temple Emmanuel. And it starts with our education. It lives in our vibrant and growing religious school educational community through our preschool, our religious school, our midweek Hebrew program, and in our teen programming. Each of these is more than just a program. They are laboratories of Jewish identity, deep learning, community building, and Jewish living. It is about bringing your children here and engaging them and setting them up for the world that they are about to enter. And outside of these walls, it lives at Jewish summer camps, such as Goldman Union Camp Institute, where I spent 2 weeks and where my son goes to camp, where children grow and explore their Judaism, deepen their connection to Israel, and form friendships that last a lifetime. The cost of camp may be high, but the return is priceless. It creates a generation grounded in Jewish pride, love, and connection. And God willing, it will once again live in the journeys our teens will take to visit Israel, to enjoy firsthand encounters with the beauty and complexity of the land and its people. These trips invite our children to wrestle with the many narratives of Israelis and Palestinians and to dream of what Israel can yet become, a land where all of its inhabitants yearn for dignity, safety, and peace. Hope is also found in the conversations we have with our children, the kind that makes space for their questions, their doubts, and their dreams for a Jewish future. Those real, honest, and authentic conversations will prepare them for the world that's awaiting for them, a world where their Judaism will be tested and where hostility towards Jews and Israel is all too real. We cannot afford to send our children into the world unprepared. We cannot send our children into the world unprepared. We each need to be invested and give them the tools that gets them ready. We need to show them that we have hope in them, and we need to teach them how to hope themselves. Every one of these choices is an act of tikvah, of hope. But here's the truth. Our children are watching you closely, okay? They're watching us adults. You guys are watching us. And we simply can't hand them programs and expect them to absorb hope. They will not learn it from curriculum alone. They learn it from each and every one of us. From the Jewish lives that we live at home, in our community, with pride and joy and conviction and dedication and the unshakable belief that Od lo avda tikvatenu, our hope will never be lost. Our work will never stop, no matter how disparaging and hopeless the world feels around us and around you. We cannot stop there. We have to continue to work for a better day, and we have to show the world and our children and ourselves that Judaism matters and that the future of our people matter and the future of Israel matters and the future and heart and soul of the world that we carry the Torah into matters to us. This is why Israel's anthem is not named the strength or the victory. It's Hatikvah, the hope. And why Imber's defiant words still ring true. Od lo avda tikvatenu, our hope is not lost, not until the very last Jew exists in the world. As I alluded to earlier, here in Cleveland, we know a thing or two about hope. We've made a whole identity out of there's always next year. We keep showing up for our teams even when the odds are impossible, even when history tells us not to get our hopes up, except for this year. But here's the difference. In sports, our hope can only cheer from the stands, and we are the best fans, and we are the best unofficial refs and coaches and players, if only they would follow what we know. In Judaism, our hope takes the field. Judaism cannot be and is not passive. Jewish hope acts. Jewish hope builds. Jewish hope chooses life. That is our anthem. That is our story. That is our blessing. And that is the work that we must do to build a better future, rooted in hope that we have for our children and the hope that they will pass down to their children. Od lo avda tikvatenu. Our hope will never be lost and must never be lost. Amen.